Hello and welcome to Just for Farmers. Today, I was going to say I'm by myself. I'm not by myself. I've got an amazing guest and dear friend with me today, but no Paul Harris. So it's my turn to say hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. My turn. I did it, not him. They're a scoundrel. Today, I'm with an old friend and colleague and fellow professional. And I'm going to embarrass him a little bit, and he doesn't easily blush, but I'll see what I can do. Because he hasn't got his ice axes with him to hurt me. This is Nigel Vardy. His handle is Mr Frostbite. There's a theme emerging. You'll get it. And I've asked Nigel in because over the years, one of the things I've most respected about him is his ability to make decisions, his calmness, his rationale, his bizarre, weird, warped sense of humour, and his love of beer and pies and malt whiskey. So, Nigel, welcome to Just for Farmers.
Thank you.
And can I ask, kick us off with a 2-minute potted resume of where you've been, what happened, and how you got to here?
Well, yes. Well, I was born into a part farming family, actually, in Derbyshire.
Right. Yeah.
My family background in farming is from the sort of Staffordshire, Derbyshire borders.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of my childhood either at the back end of a cow, dragging a sheep, or smelling a pig muck. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I had catarrh as a child, and the doctor prescribed plenty of fresh air, and by gum, I really did get plenty of fresh air, I assure you. But I also love the outdoors. My family were big hill walkers, and I spent a lot of my childhood going around the Peak District and enjoying, the fresh air, flying a kite, running around the fields, all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And that progressed eventually onto more serious hill walking, which progressed to winter mountaineering, which then progressed to high altitude mountaineering, quite a jump. And that's tried to kill me 4 or 5 times. I get it wrong every time.
Must try hard.
I keep coming back. I really, really do. But it's cost me a lot physically. It's taught me a lot mentally. And I still love it. And I'll still be loving it. And I'll still be doing it until my arms fall off, my legs drop off, or something else drops off. And that'll be the end of me. But till that day, it's who I am.
And a career in engineering.
Yeah, career in electrical engineer. And I joined what was known as the East Midlands Electricity Board in its day.
Yeah.
In the 80s in Derbyshire, and I spent the next 38 years trying to keep the nation's lights on in towns, in the country, many dark nights, traipsing over fields in the dark looking for pole transformers and overhead lines and trying to keep people milking and all the rest of it. And do you know, I loved it. I loved it. You could throw any weather, day, night, up to my neck in pig muck, chicken. I just didn't care. I was just in my element.
One must have goals and hobbies. So up to your knees in pig muck. Loved it. Yeah.
Chicken's much worse, trust me.
Yeah. Anyway, you said one little thing there. It's cost you a lot.
Yeah.
So tell the people watching this and listening to this about the one experience that, for people who are not Nigel Vardy, we assume it's been one of your defining life moments.
Yeah, basically in 1999, I went to climb in North America, in Alaska, on a peak we called McKinley, we now call it Denali. And 3 of us, myself and 2 friends from Staffordshire, ended up getting benighted in a storm at the top of the mountain. So we're 20,000 feet up. It's minus 60 centigrade.
Wow.
It's a howling gale. We're stuck in it for the night, and we dug in. We just dug into the ground. We got into a sort of a crevasse system. We spent the night in there, basically doing our best not to freeze to death. And we came out the next day. Were very fortunate to be rescued and brought back to safety. But because of those conditions, we all suffered severe frostbite. And in my way, I lost all my toes, both my heels, all my fingertips. My nose fell off, and a great big chunk of my left cheek fell away. But other than that, I'm absolutely fine.
I love the way you say it so casually. I'm going to ask you to consider that everybody in life has stuff. They have challenges, and what's big to one person is insignificant to another, and vice versa. I know a guy who used to teach survival skills to special forces all over the world, and yet he was afraid of rabbits. Go figure. We've
I've
all
skinned a few in my time, but okay, go on.
we've all got our quirks, and you just skipped over it very briefly. So can I ask you to consider when it started to have, when you realised it's all hit the fan?
Yeah.
We're stuck.
Yeah.
It's very, very cold. Anybody with half an ounce of logic can see that hypothermia is going to set in. Things are going to go very bad very quickly. Mm-hmm. What was your thought process? How did you feel? What were you thinking?
Initially, you're being bombarded quite physically and mentally. You've got ice flying past your head at 60 miles an hour. You can't, we're sat inches apart. You would have to quite literally, Dave, be that far apart and shout to each other to be heard.
Wow.
So you can't just have a gentle conversation about it because you can't hear each other. You're being blown apart, you're buffeted, you're banged around. So what you tend to do is you don't start thinking about a week's time. You start thinking about 5 minutes. And you go into real short-term goals. What can we do? How can we make the situation better? Can I improve, say, the clothing I've got on, or the facial protection, goggles or whatever? Have I got any more pairs of gloves to put on? If so, dare I get them out of the bag? Will they take off? How is everybody? The three of us, is anybody feeling really rough? Is anybody better, worse? Check in on everybody. And then think, we've got to go through this together. We don't know what this will be. What we do know is this howling gale is going to kill us. We have got to get out this wind. And that's why we found a crack in the ice, like a crevasse. And we got the ice axes out. And people think snow and ice is quite soft. It's like belting bell metal. And you really have to put some severe effort in there to try and cut some of the harder ice away. But we cut enough away to slide into a hole where it's still cold because you're under the ice and snow.
Yeah.
But you can at least talk. And you can dare open your rucksack because it's not going to take off. And you can actually start taking more base decisions, I suppose, in the cold light of day. Is, well, we're not going to blow away at least. So what have we got? What can we do? How can we work it out? One of the lads with us, a gentleman called Steve, was very, very cold. Myself and the other guy, Anthony, hugged him all night, told horrendous jokes, anything to try and keep mind, body and soul together. And it's very easy on documentaries now. You'll watch the TV and people will say, you mustn't go asleep and you must do this and you must do that. Well, all I say to those people is, do you know what? Go and sit in that hole, in that temperature, in a gale, and you tell me you're going to do it. Because the world, it's very simple in an armchair. Yeah. When you're up there, when, it is literally banging you in the face, you don't think, oh, I'll just pop the checklist out. Let's have a look what I've got. And you deal with things in a real situation because they're happening in real time. And I worked in a lot of electricity management on things such as, if we lost a lot of the grid, if we lost a lot of supply, if something big happened, outage planning and such. And as I said to most of them, every plan falls to pieces as soon as you have contact with the enemy. So it's okay making it, but when you're there, when you're in that position, then you have to think on your feet. And I am so, so thankful that I grew up outdoors, rain or shine, day and night. I then did standby for the electricity industry 24 hours a day. That all those little lessons that you gain from years in the outdoors, years working with people in situations where there's no written rule book, all those tiny decisions start to make a difference. And it's those that actually saved us. And the other two lads the same. We could comprehensively take realistic decisions in a horrific environment and make them work.
And I'm guessing that this isn't just some macho mountaineer story. I'm assuming that you were all terrified.
Oh, just scared, but also when you get really cold, you don't think straight. Your entire system slows down. And I can remember people interviewing me just after the accident, expecting instant answers. And my core temperature is far too low. So you are in a different world, really, in a different plane. But I'm quite the opposite of the butch and macho. Look at me on Instagram, how tough I am. Because actually, those people really abhor me. I can't do with them. What I'm interested in people is, who's the real person? Who's that person that said, I don't need pumping music. I don't need to tell everybody how tough I am, because this is me. And if you like it, that's great. And if you don't, well, that's great too.
Okay, let's move it forward a pace then. So you were stuck in this crevasse. You were having to make decisions. Now, the fact that the three of you eventually survived is testimony to the decisions you made. Are you aware of? Are you even aware, Nigel, of how you make decisions in a situation that's challenging? And I'm trying to give some perspective here to the farmers listening to this. If they've got a big decision to make, they're probably going, "Oh no, the poor bloke stuck on a mountain. You could have died." Well, that's nothing compared to my decision making is decision making. Have you got a process?
No true process, but what I tend to be is very realistic. We've got to take a decision, and some decisions hurt people, some decisions don't. It might be based on a financial side, and we can all dream about figures, but you've also got to look what's in the bank. And I don't just mean on money. It could be how much energy have you got left in your system. I know we used to talk years ago, Dave, about, if you've got a decision to take, try eating a frog, just get it over with, take the pain, live with it. And something we learned very quickly on the mountain was, if we don't take these decisions, we're going to die. So we've got to take them. Now, I'm hoping not everybody's in a similar situation, but also when we take them, we've got to stand by them, and we've got to accept that there may be consequences, and we may be happy with those consequences because it may be what we're after in the first place.
Yeah.
And it might all go tips up and it might be a disaster, but we have to stand up and say, I am making this stance, this decision, this is what we need to do, and it is based on this information. So on the mountain, we had very little information. We didn't have a lot of food or water. We did have a radio. We didn't get back outside in the storm, so we've taken all those out. So we've got a radio. So why don't we actually ask for help? Why don't we use this thing and see if there's actually anybody out there?
And that takes a great deal of, it takes a courage for a group of mountaineers to do that, because the last thing you ever want to do is get mountain rescue out, and that takes real courage.
And on top of that, we were issued with, in those days, like a CB-sized walkie-talkie. It was quite large, and 8 batteries, AA cells. And we soon learned, there was an American team climbing at the side of us at one point, they accidentally flicked the radio on and flattened their batteries. So we took the decision, take the batteries out, but also in such a cold environment, cold batteries just don't work. So I actually went up on the hill with them always on my right-hand side thigh pocket, keep them warm. But that means in the snow hole, in the dark, in the cold, in the night, with freezing cold fingers, I've got to get those 8 batteries out. I've got to pop them into the radio. I've got to put the back on. I've got to stick my head out into that blizzard, pull out, it was old whip aerials in those days, pull the aerial out, make the call. And it's not until a long, long time later, Dave, I can assure you, I sat down one day and thought, what if you dropped one of the batteries, Nigel? Because I wouldn't be here. There's no way we'd have been able to make that call. Wow. Nobody finds you in a hole in the ground and would have frozen to death and died. But I did make the call. And I took the decision to stick my head out into the blizzard. And I work in mountain rescue now. I'm actually in the Buxton team, and the days in the modern world of I've got a phone, I'll be safe. This was a very different world. We were in a blizzard with a handheld radio that does not have a lot of power to transmit. It's got reasonable power to receive. And we managed to get a very garbled message out to the ranger base at 7,000 feet, which is permanently staffed. But it was garbled, and they generally got an idea somebody was in trouble. So we did the old 20 questions of 1 click for yes and 2 clicks for no on the radio button. And they worked out who we were and just said, because we could hear them all right, get your head back down, come out at 7 o'clock, we'll put fixed-winged aircraft up for you, we'll come and see if we can spot you, but there's nothing we can do in the dark in a storm. Stay safe. That was it. But we had made that contact. We'd got past ourselves in our own way, because in my experience, the biggest people in our own way are us.
Yeah,
it's nobody else, it's ourselves. I don't want to. We'll always blame somebody else and say, I can't do that because of them.
Of course.
But all you're doing is turn your eyes around, look in. And we made the call, and they did put an aircraft up. They did spot us. And only a few weeks ago, I went back to Alaska for the 25th anniversary and met one of the ladies that was on that call, who said, being rescued from where you were, particularly 25 years ago, you're very lucky to be alive.
Nigel Lucky Vardy. So do I rationalise from this that when it comes to in difficult situations making a decision, your ethos is around it's better to keep making decisions, because even if it's wrong you can readjust, than I call it a paralysis of fear rather than procrastination.
Yeah.
You know, there's a difference between procrastinating on a decision and when things are in a really bad situation, we almost become paralysed with fear for fear of making the wrong decision.
Yes.
So is your ethos keep making decisions?
Well, absolutely, because the thing is as well that particularly in this modern world, it's very easy to criticise people online. It's very easy to send messages out, and you know, you could look at any day in the news or the Olympics or whatever. It doesn't matter. People will bombard you with, "I think that's rubbish."
Yeah.
Again, they're sitting in an armchair in a nice warm house on a summer's afternoon, and they haven't been there. But it still hurts because we do tend to accept criticism and never forget it, but we instantly forget the praise. Because that's human nature. Tragically, it is.
It's true.
And everybody wants the nasty story, because that's what, I mean, it's sad to say, makes headlines. So if you can keep making decisions, and you know what? Don't be frightened of asking for help. If it is a decision that you don't feel qualified to make, you know, I'm an electrical engineer, fine. I'm a mountaineer, great. And then because of my injuries or whatever else, I'll go to hospital. And they'll say, we're going to do this to you, Mr. Vardy, and we're going to do this and do this piece of surgery, blah, blah, blah. Do you think that's the right thing to do? I'm not a doctor. So I'll ask the doctor and say, do you think it's the right thing to do? Because I can tell you how to build a power line and put a transformer in and climb a mountain. I couldn't tell you an iota of what's going on inside my body. That's your specialism. So if you say to me, we think that's the correct thing to do, I'm on your side. Because I will ask an expert. And don't be frightened to get experts in who are completely non-judgmental and not connected.
Yes.
Because you don't need people who are there for their own ends. And if it is in agriculture, in finance, in life skills, in building, whatever, you sometimes need to get somebody who really does know what they're talking about. None of us can build a barn, probably. I can't mend a combine harvester. You know, we need the experts to help us out. But also then they could guide us to say, you know, this is the parameters you've got. That's probably the way you need to go. But at the end of the day, you've got to put your name on the line.
So I'm assuming that the next morning they sent out a spotter plane.
They did. They sent out a spotter plane, and we weren't quite sure if it had seen us or not because it was very broken cloud. We got out the hole, obviously, because they can't see underground. And I made the fatal mistake of falling over. I hadn't realised at this point that both my feet were frostbitten. I mean, they were solid. They were blocks of ice. And I fell over. And I fell over and dropped the radio. And it tumbled down the hill a little bit. And I thought, Nigel, what an idiot. Go and fetch it. And then I realised I couldn't walk. And I fell over and went tumbling down this slope. Picked up the radio. And it didn't look damaged in any way. And I thought, okay. And I sort of struggled to get back to the lads. I just could not comprehend why my feet weren't working when the answer was 6 inches in front of my face. Because you're sometimes too close to the problem. And you might be in denial of, well, it wasn't that bad a night. But obviously it was. But I went back to the lads and the radio never worked again. And I felt an absolute liability. Because I'd lost the only means of communication we got with everybody out there who was probably going to try and save our lives. So we took the decision of, well, you know, God helps those that help themselves. We'd better try and get back to the tents if we can. The weather had improved, although it wasn't brilliant. Steve had gone from being absolutely perishing cold to actually quite brilliant. I mean, I just couldn't believe how fantastic he was. And Anthony was okay. And suddenly I was the casualty, if you want to call it that way. And we really, really forced and worked hard to try and get back to the top of a place called the Orient Express. It's one of the routes on the mountain. Lots of mountains, the climbing routes are named. We had to get to the edge, down the Orient Express, and our tents would be somewhere down the bottom. But it became very apparent very quickly that I wasn't walking well. I was falling over. I couldn't see properly out of one eye. All this sort of left-hand side of my face was all inflamed like I was in a boxing match. And the guys nursed me. They physically nursed me step by step by step. And something that should have taken, I don't know, hour, 2 hours, 5, 6, 8, 9 hours later, we're still there. Wow. We're still fighting. I can't give you time scales because, you know, you don't look at a watch when you're in these situations. I don't. I'm more interested in I'm going to live about yeah, what time it is.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I've never worn a wristwatch ever since.
Wow.
Because as far as I'm concerned, if the sun comes up in the morning and goes down in the afternoon, that's good enough. If that stops, we're in big doo-doo. But we fought our way across. We got to some rocks with at least a little bit of wind shelter. And Steve and Anthony now took the decisions because I was completely out of it, and just basically said, you know, what are we going to do? We can't leave Nigel. We can't abandon him. And Steve took what I think is probably the bravest decision I've ever seen a human being take, which was, I am the most qualified mountaineer, and he'd been mountaineering for years to a very high standard, Steve had. And I feel a lot better than I did. I'm okay. Anthony stayed with Nigel, keep him going. I will go for help. We know there are people climbing on the other side of the mountain. I will go for help. We'll get some guys up here and we'll all go home safe. And that was the plan. Well, we all make plans, don't we?
We all make plans, yeah.
Whether they come out right is, of course, another matter. And the long and short of it was, a number of hours later, a helicopter did actually pop up, a pilot called Jim Hood, risked the chopper himself and everything, quite literally, to get us off. And he took us off one at a time.
Hold on a minute. I don't know a lot about it. I know very little, if anything, about engineering. But okay. What altitude were you at?
20,000 feet.
Helicopters don't function at 20,000 feet, do
well, they do, but not very well.
Okay.
There's not much air pressure under them. You're right. and that's why they have a very specific helicopter called a llama. And they dropped us a rucksack, and in the rucksack was a flask of hot juice, which we threw down like there was no tomorrow. But there was also a radio, and we could talk to the pilot. And one of the defining moments for me was to turn it on and actually talk to another person who was prepared to come and save your backside. And this guy just said, get the screamer suits out of the bag. I'm going to refuel. I'll be back. You know, screamer suit. What the hell's a screamer suit? And it's like a big body harness.
Right.
And the reason they call it a screamer suit is because when you're flying under the chopper, most people scream. And so what they said is dump everything. Everything you own has got to go. Your rucksack, your cameras, your ice kit, the lot. It's too heavy. I will struggle to lift you one at a time. Now, as I say, I work in mountain rescue, and very often the chopper lands, you put the casualty into the helicopter, you take them away. That's not a possibility here. So they have a static cable under the chopper. They hover, you clip on, and they take off with you flying underneath on the end of a cable. Hence the screamer suit. And Anthony helped me clip on because my hands were utterly hopeless. And I'll always remember looking him in the eye and shaking his hand and saying, I'll see you at the bottom, mate. And the chopper took me away just a few feet into the air, and then we suddenly went over the 4,000-foot cliffs of the Jeanette Basin. And I'm airborne, you know, I'm flying under this thing, desperately trying to hold on to a rope, which is pointless because I'm not going anywhere, but that's human nature.
Semi-conscious.
Semi-conscious. And of course, what you've got to also remember is I'm scared of heights. So I'm in a position where I'm petrified of heights.
Yeah.
You might ask why I've become a mountaineer.
Yeah,
I ask myself every day. 3 weeks in, 7 minutes out. In 7 minutes, we'd crossed every piece of mountain that we'd come up. We were down in base camp. And the chopper didn't land. It just, somebody comes across, releases the cable, gets you on what they call a litter towards a stretcher. The chopper goes back for Anthony. And I'm sort of, you know, stunned, and I'm in this stretcher. And all I can hear people saying is, where's your third man? Where's your third man? And I'm thinking, well, Steve's on the mountain. And Steve must have got somewhere because the chopper's come, so he must have found some help. Somebody said, yeah, we know where your mates are. We can't get up there, but we'll get some helicopter assistance and all the rest of it. And we put the story together. And it was utterly rubbish because Steve never got there. On his way to try and help us, he tragically fell, broke both his legs, and spent another night out on the mountain convinced he was going to die.
Wow.
He didn't. They brought him in the next day in real hypothermia. I mean, touch and go stuff. And we thought we'd had a bad time. And we're all airlifted then, myself and Auntie the day before, of course, Steve the day after, to Anchorage, and then taken into hospital for the next couple of weeks in America, and then airlifted back to the UK.
Where thankfully you haven't got pictures to show people that I've seen of your blackened toes, facial appendages and fingers. And they became brittle. You said that they smelled, that eventually they fell off and they were chipped off, and you were told, if I remember rightly, that you'd never walk again. Is that right or not?
I had a number of stories, Dave. When I was in America, there was the most wonderful consultant doctor, and he looked like Father Christmas. He's sadly now not with us, but he walked into the ward. He came out of retirement, and he walked onto the ward one day just to come and say hello. And he looked at me and he said, right, you'll be back in the hills again, Mr Vardy. And that was within a week of the accident. And Dr Mills, and he obviously, his specialism all his life was frostbite. He worked with the American military and many other organisations over his life, and he specialised in cold injuries. And he knew what we're like. We're very determined people. We don't sit still well. We don't sit down. We love being active. In fact, putting us in a bed and telling us to do nothing for 3 months is a horrific. Give that to a teenager now and they're just lying there basking in it. All we want to do is get up. But the thing to remember as well is you desperately want to get up. You desperately want to go and do all these things. But then you have to think, and I was 30 years old, I have got to give the control of my life away for some time to professionals who will help me. And only when I can do things on my own again can I take that control back. So my toes went black, my fingers went black, my nose and face went black. When I came to the UK, they were all amputated. In fact, when my nose fell off one day when I sneezed, that frightened the hell out of people. But it's only then when you realise all this talk about what's going to go on is actually now going to happen. We can all talk about things. People talk about things all their life. They never do them. The day of, now we're going to get you to stand up and walk. And so many people have this idea, well, you haven't got big toes, so you can't walk. My question to them would be, have you got big toes? Most of them say yes. So how do you know? And they're just trying to put their life ideas onto you, when actually, I tell you what, I'm the one here with no toes. I'll take the decision if I can walk or not. I mean, it might end in tears, but if I don't have a go, how will I ever try? How will I ever find out? And 2 physios got me with a walking frame, stood me up. Now, you've got to bear in mind, I've been laid flat for 3 weeks. So my legs have wasted very badly. And I was also told to eat lots because of the energy I needed to rebuild. So I put a couple of stone on as well. And then when I stood up, the 2 nurses looked at me and said, by gum, you're tall, because they never met me, stood up. There's only one profession knows how long you are laid down. Don't get there yet. But when I stood, and it was, try a few simple steps. We're not expecting you to run down the corridor. And it was a polished NHS floor. I got 2 big Ritva shoes, because bear in mind, this was a Wednesday. The Friday before, they'd taken my toes off. So we got less than a week. Incredible. I was upright, and it was a shuffle and a move a frame and a shuffle and a move a frame and a shuffle and a move a frame. And I did that for, 10 yards. And then they took the frame off me. And some people say, what an awful, cruel thing to do. No, it's absolutely the right thing to do, because every one of us needs a kick up the backside every so often. And what they were doing was, if we leave you with that frame, you'll rely on it the rest of your life. So don't even be given the choice. We will just remove it.
It's looking inwards, like you were saying earlier again. It's working and making decisions based upon what's true rather than I assume I can't or assume it'll go wrong. Well, assume what if it goes right? Assume you can. Ask for help. Yeah. Have you noticed how Nigel's story reinforces all of the key points he's suggesting to us here? So, Nigel, because time is marching on, crikey, I've just seen the time. We need to wrap this up, mate. So tell us what's happened since then, because I know you did get back out in them hills, didn't you?
I did. I had to have a year of recovery, a year or two of recovery, and lots of surgery and all the rest of it, skin grafting and such. And then I took a decision to go climbing in the Alps, which I did. And then I went to the Himalayas. And for the past 25 years, I've done extensive high altitude mountaineering. I've also now taken up sea kayaking, and I still climb in the UK, work in mountain rescue. Yes, it still hurts. No, my toes aren't going to grow back. Hey, welcome to the world. And as I say, for 25 years of the accident, I actually went back to Alaska to say thank you to the people to whom I owe my life.
And modesty being massive for you, I hope you won't be too offended if I say, and weren't you the first Briton and the first, in inverted commas, registered disabled person to climb the 7 highest mountains on the 7 islands of the world?
Yes. Yeah. And I do things for pleasure. I am surrounded in a mountaineering world of people who want to put everything on Instagram and tell you how good they are to try and impress people. I do things because I love it. I can't see the point of living life to tell other people what you're not. Go and enjoy life, look in, smile, look at the stars, take in the fresh air, listen to the grass. Costs nothing. Best thing you'll ever do.
So how do you react to challenges and adversity now? Do you think you react differently to how you would have done prior to this experience?
Yes, I do. I think because of what I've been through, you learn things such as, rather than saying, oh, I can't pick this up, oh, I can't work with this because I can't, I'll look at, okay, this is going to be interesting for my hands. Every day is still a learning day to this day. What can I do? How can I adapt it? And if I can't adapt that, how do I adapt me? So, I've taken up sea kayaking, and these hands, the people on video will see this, but these hands, how do I hold a sea kayak paddle? How do I climb a mountain? How do I go up a rock face? Well, the rock's not going to change. So what I've got to do, I've got to change. I've got to look at, can I do it? Or do I say, this isn't for me, but something else is? And I've adapted sea kayak paddles. I've adapted, because background in engineering, I'd go in and say, oh, we can tweak this, we can look at that, we can work with this. But at the end of the day, it's still my arms working it, and it's still my hands holding it. And going around the world complaining about, I can't cope because my hands are missing, is not going to do any help at all. So let's just grasp it by the nettle, work with it, and go and do it.
So the core messages I'm taking from this, that people listening to this and watching this, I hope they go back and watch this rather than just listen to it, because you can see in Nigel's face and mannerisms that he means every word he's saying. This isn't sort of very flippant semantics he's spouting at you. He lives and breathes this stuff. I've known him for, gosh, it must be nearly 20 years now.
Yeah, it must be.
Wow. And he does. He looks inward. So look inward. Don't look externally for your references. Go and find out yourself what you can do. Ask for help and have a go. And remember what he just said there at the end. If the challenge can't adapt, how can you adapt? Nigel, I hope it hasn't been too much of a challenge reliving that moment.
No,
it can't be pleasant being constantly asked to relive a horrifically traumatic experience, but you've done it with dignity and aplomb, full of gratitude. I'm sure everyone listening to this is hopefully applauding you right now. Thank you very much for your time, your expertise, and your honesty.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Dave.
If anybody wants to get hold of you, maybe to come along and speak at a farming event or a conference, how can they best get hold of you, mate?
Type Nigel Vardy into Google or Mr Frostbite, you'll find me, and I'd be delighted to drag myself back out in the fields on the back of a tractor.
And there's a date. So put that one in your diary. Nigel, thank you very much, and we'll. Now we're going to have a really short piece from James, the Body Fix coach. Something that'll help your well-being. But remember, it's advisable to speak to your doctor before you start any significant exercise regime. Once again, we're with James Bacon, the Body Fix coach, and I was asking some of my friends who are farmers about, apart from their back, apart from their knees, what's the thing they struggle with? And they say, well, we're on our feet all day, Dave. Either the feet get tired, sore, or they experience something called plantar fasciitis, which is something I struggle with, actually. So first of all, James, what's plantar fasciitis?
All right, so plantar fasciitis. So if we think about the foot, so from the heel bone towards the first ball of the foot, there's a layer called plantar. So I'll give you a show. So down here, there's a thin band here that takes a lot of the shock and absorption from our walking. So that's your plantar muscle there. So fasciitis is when this tissue here gets a little bit inflamed, a little bit sore, because it's taking too much of the brunt through the force we're putting through it. Now, and we'll also talk about fascia tissue as well. So we've got the muscles, but then fascia tissue is the connective glue of our body. So we've got three different separate chains of fascia tissue which run throughout the body, and the deep back line is the one where the plantar fascia comes from. Okay, so a couple of exercises that you can do to help yourself. A ball, nice and simple. If you haven't got one of these trigger point balls, which you can get off Amazon, a tennis ball will probably do for this. So what you're going to aim to do, put the ball onto the floor, and I'm going to put that arch of my foot onto the ball, and all I'm going to do is roll from the heel up towards the big toe.
How much pressure are you putting on?
Just so it's comfortable. I wouldn't go too hard with it, because we don't really want to irritate anything, but what you're going to try and feel for is little nodules of tissue that feel a little bit gritty in a sense. So I would probably work 20 to 30 seconds up this arch, and then I can go down. We've also got another arch on the outside of the foot, which is the lateral side of the foot, and on me I can feel this one's a little bit more tender, so I could probably work on that one again for 20 to 30 seconds, going from the little toe down towards the heel. And then I can go across the foot as well in different directions. I'll probably work from inside to outside, just having a good scan up and down, see if you can find any tissue that feels a little bit gritty again.
And is this something that a tennis ball will do? A trigger ball, did you call it?
Yeah, so a tennis ball will do, they're nice and soft. A trigger point ball, again, Amazon, you're probably going to, it's a fairly soft ball, the trigger point one, but they're supposed to feel the same as someone's hands. You're probably looking at between like 10 and 30 pounds for one of those though.
And if they haven't got any trigger balls or tennis balls, can they use a tin of beans?
Yes,
Hey.
it could be useful. Yeah, you could use a tin of beans.
So there we go, a little top tip for tired and sore feet. You see, that is, and I want you to, if you're not watching this, if you're listening to this, James has just grimaced, because even someone who does this stuff every day, even he gets sore joints occasionally. So it happens to us all, guys. The thing is, are you going to do something about it? Thanks, James. So in this drill down section, we're going to be talking about managing those difficult conversations, you know, the ones you don't really want to have. It might lead to a bit of confrontation. Maybe it's with somebody in the community. It might lead to some aggression. How can you manage these people without either A, going locking horns and it ending up in perhaps even physical encounter, or B, just wincing and shying away and running away from the situation? How can we better manage these situations?
Yeah, so difficult conversations, again, is a topic I get asked about a lot on farm. Is how can I manage this difficult member of staff that just moans and comes at me every Monday morning and complains about what happened at the weekend, and their performance isn't that good, but they're really aggressive. And, you know, sometimes, particularly again, thinking about our different personality styles, we might respond differently for that. But some of us really don't want to have the difficult conversation. I've got to tackle somebody on something, and it's difficult. Remember, we were talking, Dave, before we had this conversation, you gave me a really interesting example, because you work a lot with students in the education sector. And you were saying one way you can sometimes deal with somebody who's being quite aggressive towards you and they're very angry about something. Can you tell us about that, how you would handle that situation? Okay, what I'm about to suggest to you, I wouldn't suggest you try it for the first time
in a really intense situation. On the Richter scale of situations, don't pick a 10, okay? Pick one that's a 2 or 3 or a 4 maybe.
Somebody who's a bit frustrated, maybe.
Yeah, maybe a bit frustrated.
So maybe someone's come to you and they've said, look, you've changed the rota again. I was supposed to be on day off on Thursday, and now you're telling me I've got to work on Thursday, and I've got to come in on Saturday and Sunday as well. It's just not fair, Dave.
That was very good, Paul. That was really good, wasn't it? Eh?
We're getting into our role play, aren't we? So I'll give you that as an example. I'm cross, I'm frustrated, and I've come to you as my manager, and I'm telling you that you're changing the rota, and I'm not happy about it, and I'm expressing this sort of quite fierce anger.
Okay. Notice what I say, and if you're watching the video, notice the body language and what happens. So I'm going to just turn towards Paul a little bit. I'll say, right, Paul, you're saying I said that wouldn't happen again. If that's true, we need to sort it. Would you agree?
Yeah, we do.
Fantastic. Come with me. Let's sort it.
Right. Okay.
Now,
but you were supposed to be arguing with me and coming back at me. And
that's what people think. This isn't the normal situation. You're supposed to
hang on a second, wait a minute. You agreed with me.
Yeah, and I agree.
So why did you do that?
I agreed with you in quite a confrontational tone of voice as well. So I was matching your frustration and confrontation with the same tone, mannerisms, behaviour, maybe even pointing at you, which you should never do unless you say something positive. And it messed with your internal wiring, because when you go up to someone and go, nye, 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 you're expecting them to go, nye, 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 back at you.
Right,
and when they don't, they go, you're right. There is something, what? What? Now, this doesn't mean you should become a pacifist and just be rolled over at in every conversation. If genuinely you know they're wrong and you 100% can prove it, then you do have to stand up for yourself. There's a time and a place for that. But if there is, to begin with, a shred of evidence that might suggest that they're right, isn't it right that if I had said to Paul, that's not going to happen again, you're right, we should sort it?
You should own it.
We should own it. So what I did was agree with him, messing with his wiring. Then I asked for his help. We need to sort that, don't we? Would you agree? What's he going to say? No. Is he going to say yes? Then, if you heard me, I said, brilliant, come with me. And then you'd walk somewhere else. This is really important. When people have prepared themselves for confrontation or a difficult conversation, you might be sat at a desk, you might be standing up in the field, you might be in the farmhouse or in the yard, and they are in the situation, this is where it's happening. If you can move them, even if it's only 5-10 feet to a different place, let's talk about this inside. Come with me. 99 times out of 100, they just follow you. If you just turn and walk, they'll follow you. Now it's moving it to a neutral place, and then you can talk in a calm way. So, Paul, if you're right, I will apologise to you, we'll fix it, and it won't happen again. Would that work?
Fantastic.
Okay. Then you look at it, and if indeed you did agree that you were going to put Paul on the rota, you need to own it and sort it out, and you then thank them for handling it in the way they did.
Wow. So what I thought was really interesting about that is that I've always heard this phrase, de-escalate, you know?
Yeah.
So someone's coming towards you, they're looking a bit aggressive, they're about to have it out with you. And what you did, you very cleverly, with the same matching of tone, you forcibly agreed with me.
Yes.
So what people will expect is either, well, I need to de-escalate this. So, all right, yeah, I'm really sorry about that. Paul, in my case, I'm really sorry. Let's just calm down. And of course, when we tell someone to calm down, what does it normally do? Winds them up even more.
Yeah,
So what you did, you used a very brief moment of matching what that person's frustration, anger was, but then you took them away from the situation, and it did. It screwed up with my right. I'm thinking, no, I want a row, and you go, if what you're saying is true, you're absolutely right. We need to sort that. Let's go and have a cup of coffee and talk about it. And by the time we get to have a cup of coffee, I'm thinking, oh, he agreed with me. And the whole heat goes out. Now, that's not always going to be right. We understand there's going to be times when, but this idea of being very passive sometimes isn't always the right way to deal with that difficult right at the beginning. I loved it when you said, agree, agree wholeheartedly with the same level of passion and tone as the person is saying you're wrong.
But use the word if.
Yeah.
Don't just say you're right. Just say, if that's true, then we need to do something. Don't just say you're right, because then you haven't got a negotiation leg to stand
cool.
on.
Yeah.
So say, if that's true, we need to sort it. Would you agree? Yes. Brilliant. I need your help. Come with me. Let's sort this. And just turn and walk away. Then, as Paul suggested, then when you're in somewhere else, another place, then you can de-escalate, then you can calm down, and then you can just say, I'm really glad you brought that up, because if that's right, we do need to sort it. Now, occasionally, there are situations where someone will come and say, no, 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 and you know they're wrong. Now, if I can give you the context, I help teachers manage, let's just say, some challenging parents.
Challenging parents.
Oh, yes.
I think you say challenging pupils.
Oh, the pupils are easy compared to the parents.
Right, okay.
And they'll come in, and I've seen them toe to toe, salivating at the maths, snot pouring from their nose, fingers in the face of the head teacher. My little Johnny says Scooby-Doo did this, and what are you going to do? And I've trained the teacher, and beautifully, just a couple of years ago at a primary school in Manchester, the head teacher just went, let him say his piece, and then as soon as he finished, he went, if that's true, we need to do something. Would you agree? Yes. Brilliant. I need your help. Come with me. Let's sort this. Took him away from the public area of reception into his office, a calmer environment. Said, can I get you a drink? And he was, no. I want to sort it. Okay, let's sort this. So, and he was asking questions, like Paul was saying, ask questions to determine what is true. And then if what is true is that little Johnny had, then we sort it. We own it. But if not, it becomes obvious to the parent during the conversation with the teacher in question and the student in question, it becomes obvious that actually their son or daughter may be swinging the lead a bit. In which case, then normally the parent apologises, shakes the hand of the head teacher and walks out with their tail between their legs. And most parents do have tails.
So one of the things we're talking about here is, because we've done a drill down on giving feedback. Check that one out if you want to, because it almost that follows on or precedes this to a certain degree. But what you're talking about, and I think it's really powerful for people listening to hear, is how do we actually de-escalate that situation right at the beginning when someone's coming at us very aggressively. The bit that I think is quite innovative, or I've not heard that thinking before, is we're not agreeing with them, but it's our tone and our manner which is actually saying, if that's right, if what you're telling me is true, absolutely we need to sort that out. And I can just sense the brain going, I don't quite compute what's going on here.
It just works.
So that's a really useful tip, I think, from this drill down, is think about, and if somebody comes up, say the opposite way around, and they're very apologetic, but they're angry, I assume we would do the same thing. So say somebody said, if I said to you, Dave, look, I'm really upset about the fact that you've moved the rota. I'm not even sure that I want to carry on working here if you're going to keep doing that to me. What would you do then?
I would kind of match your tone and just, really? That's happened again? I can only apologise. If that's true, we need to sort that. Would you agree?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, can I ask for your help in that? Come with me. Let's sort it out right now.
Can you hear the difference? If you're listening online, what Dave's done is matched me in both occasions. One when I was quite forthright, he matched that. The second one was when I was quite apologetic, quite gentle, and you matched that as well.
Yeah.
There's a whole area about matching in terms of behavioural psychology,
absolutely.
isn't there? But that's what we're saying. So step one for a difficult conversation is match the tone, the facial expressions, but think about the language. If that's true, can you help me? Will you come over here? Let's sort this. All those are really clever statements. Nice
Wonderful.
one, Dave.
And for a difficult conversation, if you're just concerned about starting a difficult conversation with maybe one of your team members or a supplier, resolve yourself that not having that conversation can't really make things better. Avoiding a needed to have difficult conversation has never made things better. So pick a time, prepare properly, and have that conversation.
Procrastination doesn't make things better. And I think, again, listen out for the drill down on giving feedback if you want to think about how do I have that difficult conversation with somebody else, which is normally around giving somebody some feedback, some constructive feedback. Check that one out and you'll give you some tips on that.
See you soon on another drill down.